Hi everyone, my name is Michelle and I am an advisor on the SRA Hub. Today's webinar will be how to finance and pay for your study abroad trip. And I have a really awesome guest with me. His name is Cal and he is a current college student who has studied abroad more than once, and I'll let him introduce himself right now.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Cal Montejano. I'm currently a fourth year at UCSC, though I'm also a visiting student for this semester at UC Berkeley. I'm currently studying sociology, and I decided to study abroad after my second year in university. So for my entire third year, I was abroad in Europe.
Awesome. So you guys hear that? He was basically studying abroad for one whole year. And I myself also studied abroad. It was one of my biggest regrets from college. So once I got to grad school, I made sure I was going to find some way to study abroad. So feel free to ask us any questions and we'll get started with the presentation. All right. So how to pay for your study abroad trip. So these are some of the things we'll cover. Things you got to consider before you go, ways to save up before your trip, different scholarships that are available, people you need to talk to on campus, how to budget for your trip. We'll talk about credit cards and banks and take questions from you. So before you go, these are some things you want to do. Some of you guys might already have a destination in mind or thinking about applying. So these are things you have to think about. You want to research the overall cost of your study abroad trip. So you want to look into tuition, meals, housing, similar to what you did when you were researching college, because different study abroad programs might cost different prices, especially not only tuition and meals, but if you want to buy food there, like how much does it cost to go out to a restaurant? So you want to plan for those expenses as well, such as emergencies, if you want to travel to different countries while you're out there. So when I was studying abroad in Hong Kong, I also visited Cambodia and Korea because they were close by. So they're a lot cheaper to travel there while I was out there versus coming or traveling out there from the US. So do your research, see how much it costs so that you know how much to save up. Cal, do you have any tips for things students should think about when they're studying abroad and saving up?
Yeah, so I forgot to mention that within Europe, I studied abroad specifically in Florence, in Barcelona, in Paris, in London, and in Rome as well. So I did multiple different cities and 3 separate programs while I was studying abroad. So I had to be hyper aware of the fact that food is going to be different prices for wherever it is that you go. So regarding food, regardless of where you go, it would be a good idea to try to find more local stores to shop at, wherever your country is. Because those stores generally have lower prices than, say, you would at the big supermarkets. As well as if you want to travel, for example. So if you're in a place like, again, in Europe and you want to visit other countries or other cities, make sure you budget for that as well. There are great different applications for you to be able to look at different airfares or whatnot. From my personal experience, when I studied abroad in Europe, there were 2 different companies, Ryanair and EasyJet, that were low-cost airlines that will help you fly from one destination to another within Europe. And so those tended to run closer to what would be the average college student's budget while they're studying abroad. But as well, you also want to be able to keep close track of exactly what you're spending your money on. Because once you're studying abroad, you're in a new place. You're excited to be there, but you also want to be careful of, kind of keeping track of what it is that you're spending money on, as well as in what ways can you save. And along those lines as well, you want to be able to be aware of the fact that exchange rates are going to be different for different countries. So I personally had to keep track of both the euro and the British pound. To be able to accurately budget just how much I'm spending. So if, for example, a bagel let's say a bagel in London would cost £1.50, that would roughly mean that would actually be about $2. So those sort of things can sneak up on you if you're not careful.
Awesome, thanks. So speaking of ways to save, so You want to talk to your study abroad office. So every school that offers study abroad program should have a study abroad office. So check them out. They oftentimes have scholarship opportunities within the program. So I had a friend who, had financial aid that would transfer over to wherever they were studying abroad. And in addition, he asked them, "Hey, are there any other scholarships or stipends?" And he just asked, and they gave him like an extra $600 just to spend however he wanted. So it doesn't hurt to ask your study abroad office. Also, talk to your financial aid office because they might have some as well. It might help to choose a destination or a study abroad program in a country or a city that's not as popular because generally most students tend to pick the same cities and countries, so it's a little bit more competitive. So when you pick a country that's less competitive or less popular, you might find more funding for that. You could also use personal fundraising pages like GoFundMe to kind of ask your community and family to help you kind of gather up the funds so that you can enjoy your experience while studying abroad. And these are other ways to save. You can also get a job now, especially if you're not studying abroad for another half a year or a year out, or if you want to study abroad in the summer, you can kind of have this semester to find a job. Work study, sell unused items that you don't no longer need. If you have a hobby that you can sell your items to make extra cash for, I would say go for it. Maybe on Etsy or something like that. And just make sure that any money that you make or save to put it in a specific account, whether it's in a bank or not, so that you know not to use it. Cal, were there other ways that you try to save up for your trips?
Yeah, so to kind of bounce off of what you were just talking about, I myself decided to get a summer internship before I studied abroad. So I began studying abroad in the summer, or excuse me, at the end of the summer of 2016. And so I knew that I had some time to get ready with a summer internship. So I was able to save some money from that summer internship to, let's say fund my airfare or fund the first few weeks that I was there studying abroad. And so that was an absolute lifesaver. So if you're able to get an internship or a part-time job during the summer, it'll really be invaluable to help you save for the trip, especially for personal expenses here and there. As well as I decided to go ahead and apply for, or not, excuse me, not apply for, but rather go to my financial aid office and ask, is there any more scholarships or grants or loans that I can either apply for or receive for studying abroad? So if you're able to talk with your financial aid office, which you will have to talk to them eventually if you're deciding to study abroad, you'll be able to ask them, is there any way I can receive more grants or loans to help finance this endeavor? Because studying abroad in certain locations, it can be more expensive than your home university, but as well the inverse is true. With less popular destinations, it could also be less expensive than staying, a semester or a term at your home university. So it's all on a case-by-case basis, but it always helps to reach out and ask your financial aid office for more help. In addition to that, SRA as well will, I am part of Students Rising Above, SRA. And so they are a scholarship that they were able to help me in funding just a portion of my studying abroad opportunity. So for your SRA students out there, don't hesitate to also, talk with your advisor about potentially, funding your studying abroad opportunity through them as well.
Yeah, and if you're a Hubster, you can still reach out to one of us, one of the online advisors on the Hub, and we'll try to find you scholarships too. So just reach out to your advisors. So scholarships, there's actually a lot of scholarships specifically for traveling abroad. So you'll see two of them here. And so they range depending on what scholarship, but sometimes they can be up to like $1,000 or even $5,000, like the academic program. So, just a good chunk of change. So look into those. And a lot of times they offer it every semester or every quarter. So it's not just, one winner for this whole year. They are reoccurring. So look into those. Talk to your academic department, like your major department. They might have specific scholarships for you, community-based scholarships, and of course the SRA scholarship list. Of course, you want to keep track of the deadlines with the SRA tracker because you probably know there are many different scholarships out there with different deadlines and requirements. Some require letters of rec, some require essays. So use the tracker to stay organized so that you don't miss any deadlines. You can connect with students who participated in the program, either in your specific program. And when we say program, it means like the country that you're studying abroad at, or your specific school. Just ask them for tips on, what did you guys write about for your essay that got you guys to scholarships. So use your peers. Cal, do you have any scholarship tips?
Yeah, so for any university students, as I mentioned before, it always helps to go to your study abroad office to ask what sort of potential scholarships your school may offer. Especially, as I mentioned before, the less popular places that people may want to visit, those places tend to offer really generous scholarships as well for students to explore those new places. And specifically for any UC students or potential UC students out there, from my experience, I know that they really wanted us to go abroad. So they really do offer tons of scholarships to both popular and non-popular places. It's a matter of, again, going to the study abroad office and saying, these are the places that I'm interested in. What sort of scholarships can I apply for?
Well, awesome. Thanks, Cal.
Yeah.
All right, budgeting. So once you have a good idea of what you'll have to pay at wherever you're studying abroad, you can begin budgeting. And of course, we have a budget tracker for that. Cal, what were some of the things that you had to think about when budgeting?
So when it came to budgeting, the first few things I had to think about is that I had to resist the impulse to buy every little thing I saw. For example, when I landed in Florence, it was a brand new country, Italy, with brand new language, and everything just seemed like a potential souvenir for me. But I knew that I had a certain budget in mind, and I had to keep in mind that over time I will be able to find maybe I'll be able to find these sort of things a little bit cheaper. And along the lines of that, your first few weeks, you just may be exploring new places or more so touristy places. And those places tend to offer, souvenirs, of course, but they tend to offer them at a higher price. Or they tend to offer even basic things like food at a higher price as well. So you'll find that, the more out of the more touristy area places and the more local places you go to, the better the prices will be, and hopefully more along the lines of, a student's budget. So my advice for you is to wait for a bit before resist the impulse to buy the little souvenirs you want to bring back to your friends or family back home, and try to find any local or cheaper places that'll no doubt be more readily available as the weeks go on. And it'll be much more of an inviting experience as well, as opposed to going to the touristy places. Who knows? If you're in a country that you don't speak the language in, you might even get to practice with more of the locals. As well, along the lines of that, if you do plan on taking trips to other cities or other countries, make sure you do plan those in advance, or else you might find yourself losing a lot more money than you thought you were once you're there. So, for example, one of the trips that I took, for example, is that I was visiting Brussels in Belgium. And it wasn't a trip that I planned for in advance very well. It was much more of a spontaneous trip. And so I ended up paying significantly more for, let's say a taxi to the city center, or for a hostel that I paid a little too much for because I didn't plan in advance. When in another opportunity, I could have taken, the local train from the airport, or I could have paid for a much cheaper hostel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it sounds silly to plan multiple trips, but it's actually very common for students who study abroad to go to other countries. So something I recommend in terms of budgeting is just looking up flights. Like go on Google Flights and see how much it would cost. You're studying abroad in Rome and you want to go to London. Like how much would that plane ticket cost? How much would a train cost or whatever? So just do that ahead of time so you can get a sense of how much it would be. It might be a little different when the time comes when you buy the ticket, but at least you can prepare ahead of time. And you could just do what you're doing now as college students. You know, a lot of students try to save money by eating breakfast in their dorms instead of eating out for every meal. So those are things that you can do while you're studying abroad too. You can just get cereal or make yourself eggs, whatever it is, as a way to save. And we want to talk about banks and credit cards. It's really important. So if you have a credit card, make sure that they know you'll be traveling abroad. You'll be traveling abroad, or your card will get declined. So if you try to pay for something, it's not going to go through. So make sure they know ahead of time where you're going, from what dates to what dates. And if you're traveling to different countries and you're not quite sure where that'll be yet, you can always let your credit card company know then when you book your trip. One tip would be, you know, if you need the currency of the native country, one tip we say is to withdraw large amounts of money from your debit card. So let's say, you know, you have a debit card to use in Rome and, you know, you need cash. So you go to the bank, try to draw out money. Each time that you draw out money, you're charged a transaction fee. So sometimes it could be like $3 per transaction. So instead of just getting $10 each time, we recommend getting a larger amount. Don't get so much where, you know, if you lose it all, then you'll be in trouble. But just keep that in mind that you'll be charged a fee every time you withdraw. There are some credit cards that don't charge for transaction if you would rather use a credit card. There's a variety of different ones, so you'll have to do your research. But just be aware of your spending, because when you're using cash, it's a lot easier to see them go. But when you're using your credit card, sometimes you don't realize how much you're spending. So just be mindful. And I know Cal has a lot of experience and advice on this. So what are some of your advice, Cal?
So for me, I would say if you're able to, try to stick to using a credit card exclusively. There are certain credit cards out there that don't charge a foreign transaction fee. So, you know, you do your research and try to see, you know, which credit card wouldn't charge you for using it. And then that way you use your money from your debit card to pay your credit card, and you avoid, you know, those nasty fees entirely that can crop up when you use an ATM. Or as well as when you use your regular debit card at the store or at a restaurant, for example. Those little costs tend to add up quite fast if you're not careful, and it's why that I switched over pretty quickly within the first 2 weeks or so of my study abroad trip to mainly using my credit card exclusively for, you know, going out, or as well as paying for different things, and, you know, left my debit card to pay for my credit card instead. Yeah.
Great, thanks. So that is the last slide that we have on here. So we want to leave time for you guys to ask questions. So feel free to type them in. As you guys are thinking of different questions, I'm going to launch the post survey. So yeah, Cal's here to answer all your questions. And if it's not about, you know, financing your study abroad trip, if you just want to know, you know, how he was able to study abroad for a year, feel free to ask him just general questions about studying abroad as well. Any questions? No questions? Is it because Cal was so great with all the information that he gave? Okay. Well, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, or if you're an SRA, reach out to your SRA advisor. We think studying abroad is a life-changing, you know, experience. It was for us, and we want everyone to experience it. So don't let the price of studying abroad or any fears of like, "Oh, I don't know how to navigate this whole system or process," you know, deter you from having this experience. Any last tips, Cal?
Uh, One of the last few tips I have is try to stick to your budget as best you can. You're going to have so many, you know, different experiences and wonderful opportunities to experience your study abroad opportunity, and that's wonderful. But there's also different free or low cost opportunities that you can also do and have equally as great of a time while studying abroad. That being said, don't let the fear of missing out stop you from experiencing your trip as best as you can.
Just the last tip is just do it. Just do it. Just find the information on it. And yeah, we're here to help you through it. So don't be afraid to reach out. Thank you guys for joining our webinar. Thank you so much, Cal, for all the wisdom and tips that you have for our viewers today. I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you guys on the Hub. Bye, guys.
Take care.